today, and I'm here. I've been in the St. Petersburg Housing Authority since January of 2016. We came here with the mission of bringing RAD to fruition. We came here with the mission to exercise our right of first refusal to purchase Jordan Park. We've accomplished those things, and we're trying to take it to the final step by closing RAD at the end of the year and sustaining the process with having new construction, good sustainable housing on the south side of St. Petersburg as well as on the north side of St. Petersburg. And you'll hear more why we should do what we're going to propose to the board on the August 23rd date. Today, we want to just get information out so that the commissioners can make an informed decision. It's a very important decision that's going to come before us this month. It really is going to shape our direction as an agency for the next 30, 40 years. But more so, it's going to make sure that we are fiscally sound and moving on with the decrease of HUD support and federal dollars and the weaning of the capital fund program that allows you to modernize your property. I'm going to go off the cuff right quick and just make a comment. I was somewhat taken back by the small amount of capital fund money that this agency received. Because we don't have a large inventory of public housing, it's a formula that determines how much money you get. But the money that we get for Jordan Park is very small in the nature of a capital fund. The things that helps increase our capital fund budget is that we get bonus each year because we are a high-performing agency. Without that bonus money, we could not have been able to fix the things and repair the things in the manner in which this agency has done. I think it was a well-deserved job and a yeoman job done by the staff and the previous director in being able to take such little money and keep your property in such good shape. It is really a hard thing to do. So I just wanted to make that comment as we move forward.
I'd like to take just a second or two to have our commissioners introduce themselves as well. We have three of our commissioners present with us this morning. Ms. Davis.
I'm Dr. Delphina Davis, Chair of the Board.
My name is Harry Howard. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board and been with Housing Authority since 1996.
I'm Joanne Nesbitt, and I'm a board member at large, and I have been with the Housing Authority Board since 2015.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to ask Cindy if you'll take us through RAD. It's a term that you mentioned earlier. It might not be familiar to everyone, certainly not as familiar as it is to you. So if you will, take us through.
Basically, what is RAD? RAD is a HUD demonstration program, and basically what it does is it converts public housing, or housing that's funded under Section 9 of the Housing Act, it converts that operating subsidy to project-based rental assistance, or Section 8 subsidy. So the big question is why RAD? Why are we doing this? Well, in 2012, when RAD was first launched, at that time there was an estimated $26 billion backlog of capital needs of all the public housing across the country. And basically HUD realized that there was no way that they were going to be able to address those capital needs. So RAD was the way for them to say, how do we basically begin to address all of this backlog of capital needs? The backlog is actually the result of many years of congressional underfunding the program. The public housing program has been underfunded both on the operating subsidy side as well as the capital fund for many years. And so as a result of that underfunding, you continue to build this backlog of capital needs because housing authorities simply have not had the resources, the revenue to be able to address their capital needs. So RAD was created basically to give housing authorities some tools, some different kinds of tools that would allow them to redevelop their public housing communities. What it does is it allows housing authorities to go out into the private financial market and be able to leverage private debt and private equity that they can then reinvest back into the public housing stock. As it stands prior to RAD, housing authorities had very limited opportunities to be able to leverage any kind of, or access any private capital. So what RAD does then is it moves the public housing to the Section 8 platform. Public housing statutorily cannot have debt put on it, with very few exceptions. Under Section 8, you basically can go out and secure the private capital that you need to do. What RAD does is when it moves it to the Section 8 platform, is it makes sure that those units are going to remain affordable because it puts a long-term contract on them. And that long-term contract, by law, must be renewed. So it assures that these units will continue to be affordable into perpetuity, basically. It requires them to continue to be affordable. And that's what was key. They wanted to make sure that whatever program they put in place to help address the capital needs of public housing was going to assure that these units would remain affordable over the long term. Under RAD, residents continue to pay the same rent. They pay 30% of their income towards the rent, just like they do in public housing. So there's no rent distinction at all. And in addition to that, the residents maintain the same basic rights that they have in public housing. There's some very specific provisions that are passed along through a RAD rider to the tenant's lease that basically allows them to retain certain rights that they have as a public housing tenant. None of that is lost. The other thing that RAD does is it maintains the public stewardship of the properties. Right now, public housing is basically all owned by a public housing authority, by a public entity. Under RAD, ownership structures may vary, but it does require that they continue to have either a public or a nonprofit interest. And so that's very important because it assures again that these units are going to be maintained for the public benefit or for a specific purpose and not be converted to for-profit properties. So kind of in summary, what RAD really does is it simply shifts the public housing program to the Section 8 program. And that basically allows you to leverage the capital dollar. So it's really that simple. We're taking and putting a different kind of subsidy on the property than what it has had in the past in order to be able to go out and get capital. RAD originally, as I said, it's a demonstration program, and so when HUD first launched it, there was a cap of 250,000 units. Those 250,000 units have generally been accounted for. If you look at this graph, it shows you that there are 98,680 units that have actually closed their RAD transactions. There are another 19,410 that are in the process. They've submitted their financing plans and they're waiting to get to closing. You have another 45,306 units that have begun the RAD process. They've had what's called the CHAP awarded, or a commitment to move forward with RAD. And then there are 85,741 units that are basically in the application pipeline to get into the RAD process. So you've got a lot of RAD units that have in fact been done. Through these RAD transactions, as of the end of last month, the private capital that has been raised has been almost $6 billion on the RAD transactions that have closed to date. So you can see that what RAD is really doing is it's bringing in private capital because Congress simply has not appropriated the money to deal with the capital needs. So this $6 billion has gone to improve public housing properties. In Florida, basically we've had 3,137 units in the state of Florida that have closed on RAD to date. We have another 2,687 that are basically have CHAP awards that are in the RAD process. And there's 591 units in the state of Florida that have their financing plans in place. You can see that RAD is basically moving in the state of Florida as well, and several of the local Florida housing authorities have in fact moved along the RAD process. So what's the future of RAD? Basically, the 2018 appropriations, it increased the cap. Originally, when they started RAD back in 2012, it had a cap of 250,000 units. The cap has now been increased to 455,000 units. The other thing that the Appropriations Act did this year is it streamlined options for small PHAs, which are actually over 25% of all the PHAs in this country are considered small PHAs and have less than 50 public housing units. And so what it did is it streamlined the ability for these small housing authorities to be able to convert their portfolio. It also expanded some of the rent flexibility and allows PHA to take advantage of higher rents. And I'm going to get into the rent issue a little bit later. And it simplified the RAD application process. So I think that, in looking at what happened with the 2018 appropriations, it's pretty clear that RAD continues to be a very, very high priority for HUD. And so it really is the way that HUD is looking at addressing the needs of public housing in today's world. And with that,
Real quickly, I have an update on the 5 families that relocated from the Palms Apartments. One of the families rescinded their voucher and moved in with relatives. The remaining 4 families moved into the Burlington Post apartment complex. All families have been moved. No families have been moved themselves. The St. Petersburg Housing Authority provided movers that assisted with the families in their moves, and that's the update.
So I was asked to speak a little bit about RISE development and how that all plays into this. And the 3 commissioners here, I think, are pretty familiar with RISE since they've been around. But based upon what Cindy's been saying and what Rod will tell you, and because of the shrinking pool of federal funds, housing authorities around the country have been looking for ways to either do RAD conversions or other ways to find non-federal funds to build non-public housing stuff. And so a lot of those housing authorities over the years have formed nonprofit affiliates. And the reason why they form these nonprofit affiliates is a lot of different reasons, but basically you're protecting the assets of the housing authority from the possible failures in other projects that you're going forward with. The development risks are higher, funding sources are not as strong as if the federal government was giving you money. So there's that insulation that happens between the housing authority and the nonprofit affiliate. You also have ways that you can do additional financing structures. So having a ground lease that the housing authority still controls the land, for example, and ground leases it to the nonprofit affiliate or a subsidiary of that, still gives the housing authority control in a lot of respects over the property, but it's insulated from the development risk. Also, with low-income housing tax credit projects, again, the structure really requires you to have a separate entity, and so that's another reason why these housing authorities around the country have been doing it. So we're not the first to come up with this idea, but as soon as Mr. Love joined the authority, and when he gave me the date, I'm like, pretty soon after, because in May of 2016, RISE Development was formed. So those discussions happened pretty quickly after Mr. Love got here on why the housing authority in St. Petersburg should move forward in that direction. And so it was formed as an instrumentality of the housing authority, and this is permitted under Chapter 421, which is the statutes governing housing authorities in the state. And so people are concerned that we have this separate entity. It's an instrumentality of the housing authority. So the articles and bylaws of RISE Development Corporation require that the board of directors of RISE Development at all times be the same as the board of commissioners of the housing authority. The CEO of the housing authority is the president of RISE Development Corporation. Pursuant to the articles and bylaws of RISE Development, if RISE Development was ever dissolved, all the assets would revert back to the housing authority. So, although it's a separate entity, it's still an instrumentality and is governed by the same people that govern the housing authority. RISE Development Corporation also has the power to form subsidiary corporations or limited liability companies for a specific project. And these are called single-purpose entities. And they're called single-purpose entities because they have one purpose. It's the ownership and operation of a specific project. And this, again, limits the liability of a single-purpose. The liability is with a single-purpose entity and doesn't go back to RISE Development. So again, if you had a deficit in a project that one of these single-purpose entities has, the Housing Authority or RISE has the ability to fund that deficit, but they're not required to, so that you could much easier say, we're going to sell this project and take a loss and be out of here than you could if it was owned by RISE Development Corporation or the Housing Authority directly. Single-purpose entities are generally used in real estate transactions. I'm real estate, commercial real estate lawyer. 99% of the transactions that we do are with single-purpose entities, and in fact, they're often required by a project lender because the lender is as interested as you are in making sure that there's not cross liability between entities. They don't want another project going south affecting this project of this single-purpose entity. So it compartmentalizes each of the projects, which the project lender wants as well. So when we had the opportunity to purchase and renovate Jordan Park, and when that came before the commissioners, it was decided, as for the reasons I just set forth above, that we're going to use the ground lease interest, because currently Jordan Park, when we purchased it, the land was owned by the Housing Authority, and the buildings and the leasehold interests were owned by the third-party profit developer. That ground lease interest in the buildings would be transferred to one of those single-purpose entities, so we formed RISE Jordan Park LLC. And we closed with that entity as the leasehold owner in March of 2017. It's different than the structure that happened in the Hope 6. Everyone says, oh, well, there's a developer before, there's a developer now. How are we going to control things? Well, the structure is different because in how we're looking at proceeding going forward with Jordan Park, there'll be an entity that has a RISE development subsidiary in it, and we'll have the tax credit investors in it. The developer is under contract with the Housing Authority. The developer is here to assist the Housing Authority in doing the renovations. And then once the renovations are done, the developer leaves. The Housing Authority continues to have control through RISE Development and its subsidiaries in the operations and management of Jordan Park, and also because the management agreement is still there. So this is, when people say, oh, it's the same problem we're having with the developer, it's a totally different structure than we had under the Hope 6 grant. The RISE Development and the Housing Authority, once construction is complete, will have the total authority about how Jordan Park runs, subject to some requirements of the low-income housing tax credits, but that's not a day-to-day. Those investors don't day-to-day input on those.
Control of the underlying property, along with the maintenance and for housing authority, whether directly or under a subsidiary being RISE.
Yes.
Which is materially different from the arrangement that was with the Richmond Group and Land Tax Corporation. So I think it's important to keep in mind it was no small task to reacquire our land. And certainly the result of some of the major changes that have occurred on a national level that made it possible for us to go in and do the type of financing that's being done in the private sector at this point in time. So it allows the Center for Housing Authority to be more intensive in that regard. We'll talk more about that as we move forward. With that, Rob, if you can help take us through some of the evolution of the public housing arena at this point.
Well, to some extent, I feel like I'm filling in background for what Cindy and Jeff already said. But so the public housing program is a Depression-era program. It started in 1937, and originally it was a jobs program. And originally it was to put people back to work. The rents from public housing were supposed to pay the full costs of operating the public housing, and you had, and that's what we had. And Jordan Park was since Jordan Park was built in 1937, St. Petersburg early on created a housing authority and got into this, and Jordan Park was part of that. The program obviously has evolved over time. As you know, World War II, veterans came back for a number of years. That was who was occupying public housing, and you had strong local control with all the pros and cons of that as to who got into the housing, how it was maintained, and so on. But it pretty much balanced, and kind of went on with a program where the federal government paid for the development. The rents were supposed to pay for the operations. Nobody else was in this except the federal government and local housing authorities running it locally. As we got to the 60s, and there were many, I'm skipping, of course, about 20 years there, but we don't have all day. You know. But so that went on with some erosion in the finances locally and all that. By the 60s, we had some very good changes in the nation in terms of civil rights, making sure that everybody had access to federal facilities and federally funded facilities, not just people of a certain color or people of a certain, denomination and all of that. But and we also had some effort to end local practices that were very exclusive in terms of who could get in this housing. If you were, it might have been somebody who demonstrated how good as citizens they were or all of that, but it also might have been the city council's president or whatever. We got it more regulated in terms of who got in. The sort of impetus to serve the people who actually needed the housing the most took a much more of a front seat in terms of how that housing got allocated. But one of the byproducts of that was that the rent from the housing, the folks who were there without some relief couldn't pay that rent to operate the public housing developments. And in 1969, Congress passed something called the Brooke Amendment for Senator Edward Brooke from Massachusetts that said, okay, residents can't afford this the way it's going, and we're going to cap their rent at the time 25% of their income so that they can afford to be there. But part of what that meant was that the Congress had to start subsidizing public housing to make it work, and so that it basically wouldn't fall apart or couldn't be operated. So originally, for a couple of years, that was operating subsidy. Then it became clear that more sort of longer-term capital needs, replace the roofs, replace the boilers, all that sort of stuff, wasn't being met either. And Congress had to do subsidy for that as well. And what happened over the years is that even from like the late 60s to the 90s, say, I'm doing this in like 20, 30 years, jumps. But anyway, that over time, Congress on the subsidy side, Congress didn't keep up with it. At the public housing, on what was going on with the sites, you had more and more isolation. You had a lot of cities building this housing in isolated, segregated places where land was cheapest, and you had more and more issues with the poorest people in the city, and in many cases, people that were being discriminated against, frankly, being concentrated in these developments. Money wasn't balancing. They, in some instances, not everywhere, because there was a lot of good public housing throughout the years all over the country, including, I think, some of the smaller developments here, But in some of the big cities, etc., you had unmanageable situations. And you had such deterioration that the public housing needed massive relief and rebuilding. And so what Congress did in 1993, after a study of quote-unquote distressed public housing, is start something called the Hope 6 program, which was meant to put very large-scale grants in so that the public housing that had become dilapidated, et cetera, could be either fully renovated or torn down and replaced. And that program, at that point, this was still the housing authorities and HUD, nobody else. In 1994, shortly after HOPE 6 started, HUD came out with a ruling that public housing didn't have to be owned by the public housing authority. It could be owned by a private owner as long as they obeyed all the rules, basically. And so that opened the door for these tax credit investments for the private sector to invest money, which was needed, because even with these large HOPE 6 grants, you in many instances you couldn't do the whole job. It wasn't enough to bring public housing back to where it had to be. You also started seeing around the country mixed income developments where some were public housing, some were either only tax credit, which served somewhat higher income, or market rate housing. That isn't what happened at Jordan Park. I mean, in Jordan Park, it's all very low income housing. And what happened is housing authorities started to learn how to get into this business, but they'd never done it before. They'd run the housing. They've never had to develop the housing or work with private investors or any of that. And Jordan Park, in a way, was kind of an early model because it had no other tenants other than very low income tenants. And if you're a very low income tenant, you might kind of say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, one issue with that is those developments didn't always get the services. They didn't always get the political clout at City Hall and all that to get what they needed in terms of police, trash, all that stuff that other places had. So that was one issue. But the other thing is that in the earlier days, the housing authorities didn't know how to deal so well with these developers necessarily. And what happened in the early days is you had situations where developers basically, they bought the tax credits, their investors bought the tax credits. That was needed because that gave money to renovate or replace the housing. But the housing authorities in the earlier days didn't necessarily participate with the developers. And so the developers basically owned it. Their incentive was to make sure that the whole place didn't go bankrupt and so on, so that the tax credits would hold up. But otherwise, they didn't really have much of an incentive to manage the place well, other than what the housing authority made them do by contract. And the housing authorities were experienced in this. And so what you had, I don't know the details really of what happened here, but it was set up in that kind of a situation where the developers were running things, the housing authority has, and for that development to be managed well and not to deteriorate and all that, the housing authority had to be on top of them. And there were money problems. So the structure problem Jeff mentioned, the money problem Cindy mentioned. And what happened even after HOPE 6 is for the last 20 years or so until this year, public housing was basically more and more underfunded, and that affected whether they were run by the developers or the housing authorities. There wasn't the money. And as up until this year, the amount, for instance, in the public housing capital fund for capital repairs was actually lower than 20 years earlier. And in the meantime, the study that Cindy pointed to that said that as of, I think it was 2010, the whole system needed $26 billion in money to fix up the public housing to decent standards. The same study said you need about $3.5 billion every year just to keep up with, time goes on. Roofs crack, boilers break, all the windows need repair, all that. You need $3.5 billion every year for that. And Congress was giving more like 1.7 billion or so they weren't keeping up. So you had a situation which would have affected Jordan Park. So on the one hand, you had this developer out there basically managing it by contract with really not too much incentive to manage other than what the housing authority kind of made them do. And on the other hand, the whole system isn't getting enough money. So you got a very difficult situation. So what RAD meant to do, Cindy mentioned that, the main thing it did is it said, okay, we're going to get everybody out, we're going to let housing authorities choose to get out of the public housing business if they choose to, development by development, and go to Section 8. And the reason that that was proposed really was that over the years, although Congress has done what they've done to public housing, they've funded Section 8. And, Section 8 has had both the private, or the Section 8 program where you just go out in the community and find a unit that's called Section 8 tenant-based assistance. They've funded that mostly fully with these private owners owning it, not the housing authority. And HUD and Congress said, okay, well let's put the public housing, let's not have it in public housing anymore. Let's put it over in that side of the universe where Congress is willing to fund it. And it should be better off over the years, even though every year Congress has to decide. But Congress, and some of us, when I was at HUD even in the 90s, we made a proposal of that type. But it didn't pass in the 90s, nothing passed, right, basically. Congress was so gridlocked that nothing passed. But so it was hard to get RAD passed. And the HUD administration, by then the Obama administration, had to make a deal. And the deal that they made with Congress is, okay, you can do this. It's going to be a demonstration program, so we're going to limit how many units get done. But more critically, you can't have any more money to do it. So what that meant was, if public housing, if your public housing subsidy, for instance, here on average, as I recall, Cindy's going to get more into this later, but if it's something like $400 a unit a month to subsidize, that's what you get in public housing. Even if in Section 8, if you were going to go out and rent from the private landlord, on average it would be $600 or $800 a month. If in RAD, we're not going to give you that. You can go to Section 8, but you're going to get the $400 a month, not the $800 a month. And as a result of that, for many developments, RAD's not enough money. For some developments it is, but for many it isn't. And if they've got to have significant repairs or be rebuilt, like Jordan Park at this point, it's not enough money. So then in order to do it, it might be enough money for other developments, but it isn't there. So then you've got to figure out what else is out there. I think that's probably for the general part.
That's pretty big bites. And a lot to process. Is it fair to say, Rod, that where we are at this point in time is that RAD makes public housing doable, in a word?
RAD makes some housing that was public housing doable. It doesn't make all public housing doable. It only makes some public housing doable if you find a way to get other money.
And can I jump in? So Rod, public housing units that are heavy indebted with needing repairs don't tend to cash flow. And old public housing units that were built in the early days of 50s, 60s that have had neglect and repair typically don't fit in. But new renovated markets such as the Hope 6, when you take a Hope 6 development into RAD, the rents that are fixed by HUD typically are lower than the rents you would get just converting a public housing development to RAD. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, that's right, and Cindy may touch on it more, but the way the money works from HUD for public housing is you get operating funds which go out by a national formula, and you get capital funds which go out by a national formula. When Jordan Park would be typical in that regard. When St. Petersburg Housing Authority redid Jordan Park, what happened, the capital formula in particular is set by half of the money goes out based on the so-called backlog, which is when they did the formula, what were the needs, another national study, what were the needs there, and by sort of given how old it was and how many bedrooms, what the bedroom sizes were, all that stuff, what was the estimate of needs there. So they did half the capital formula that way, and then they did half of the capital formula based on what the so-called accrual needs, which is what do we project the future needs to be. So for a Hope 6 development like Jordan Park, what they did is they said, you just redid it. So you don't get any money for the backlog because you supposedly don't have any backlog. So on an ongoing basis, that they're relatively lower funded than a lot of other developments, really underfunded relative to other public housing.
And that's, thank you for that. And the reason I wanted you to explain that is you still need to have a decent amount of income, and income is derived from having enough eligible units that you can rent at a rate that you can then pay for your financing. I just wanted to get that out on the table there. You stay pat and just remodel. You can't service the debt over a long period of time to make the repairs. So you have to bring in another element, and we'll get into that later.
Thank you, Rod. I think it's very, very important for us to spend some time this morning really appreciating the dynamic that we're dealing with. So hopefully we've got a better handle on where the industry, if you will, of public housing has come from and where it has evolved to at this point in time. And with that, I'd like to digress for a minute off of the national scope, and let's bring it back home. And let's talk about Jordan Park in particular. And specifically, we're going to talk about the senior villages. And so I'm going to ask our RW and Mr. Wedding to take us through the part 2 of our forensic report.
I'm Rob Wedding. As you know, I see a lot of familiar faces out there who are probably tired of listening to me yammer on, but we have some new information to share with you. This morning, this is really the third segment of our workshop on the 237 Jordan Park improvements. I'll be focusing my attention on a little bit of what has been done and what the conditions are that we found in the historic village, how to correct them, what it might cost. And then my esteemed colleague, Mrs. Bradley, will look at some site planning studies we did to see what the impact of actually inserting or keeping one or more of the individual units might be on the proposed 60 unit development. So, as we all know, Jordan Park's 237 units containing 206 units developed in 2001, and the historic village, which was the 31 units developed between 1939 and 40. The 206 units are slated for upgrades and repairs to extend their useful life, and the historic units is the primary focus of what I'm going to talk about this morning. So what have we done and what have we learned? Both the 206 units and the 31 units have been a subject of two types of assessment. First, a visual assessment. What can I see with my eyes without tearing into walls, without any destructive or non-destructive testing? How do we evaluate the condition? Do I see rust, decay? What signs do I see? These were done without benefits of removing surfaces, so no X-ray vision helped. There was a 2016 physical needs assessment by EMG Corporation, a CPTED, which is a safety evaluation by the St. Petersburg Police Department, a termite investigation by Green Environmental, a home inspection report by Sheldon Home Inspections, and then site inspections by my firm and Susan over time, mostly terminating in July of 2018. So when we really got to wondering what exactly do we need to do to the historic units to improve them, what is it going to take and what is it going to cost, we reached out and asked for a forensic inspection to be aided by removed sections of wall finish ceilings and a penetrating radar study of the perimeter masonry walls to determine what's between the outside surface and the inside surface. I can't really tell by looking at it, and I can't really tell by knocking on it with a hammer. So those were done in July of 18. The forensic investigations were performed on one historic building unit at 790 Park Street. Penetrating radar study by GeoView got the perimeter, all of the outside walls from the grade to the top of the masonry wall. A structural engineering forensic investigation was performed and a hazardous materials test of suspicious materials was performed. This gives you an idea of the areas we opened up to look at, including the walls, attics, crawl space. So we actually got a better view of what the conditions were inside there. GeoView again did their penetrating GeoView radar. And what that tells us is where the voids are in the masonry wall. This is an unusual masonry wall construction. It's a 4 by 8 by 16 inch masonry unit. It has 2 cells, 2 open cells, much like conventional concrete block, but it's half as high. So that means you have twice as many mortar joints for an equal distance of the wall. And at that time, there was no standard strength test for these mortar units. Today, we commonly see them referred to as meeting or exceeding C90, which is a compression test that's done on concrete block to confirm what its strength is, what it adds to the building. The second part of the forensic investigation focused on the presence of hazardous materials, including lead paint and asbestos. And a number of suspicious areas were identified, but only one area was determined to have asbestos. And now Tony's always getting on me about using these architectural terms. My parents spent a lot of money for me to learn these terms. And it's very difficult for me to explain things without the lines. However, let me say where this asbestos was found is in the triangular part of the end walls above the horizontal, which we call the gable end. Now you'll see later on that the gable ends of buildings like this were identified as the #1 weak spot when we had Andrew down in South Florida. Most of the homes that had roof failures because of insufficient reinforcement of the gable ends. So it's not only an asbestos issue. If we can keep them, and we can, we would have to strengthen them considerably in order to meet the window. So 2 issues, one of which we're looking at now, which is the asbestos. Okay, who did this work? McCarthy and Associates, a division of Panoni, sent Vince Barnes, PE, and Tom Adams, who's their senior industrial hygienist. Those who were at our second meeting got to hear their comments direct as to how they approached it and what they found. To highlight the structural findings, we found termite damage to the roof and ceilings, termite damage to the 2 top plates that sit on the wall that are the structural integrity between the beam and the roof structure. They're almost destroyed. Insufficient clips and straps to hold the roof and walls during roof uplift. The exterior masonry walls do not have reinforcement to resist the wind or to tie the whole structure together. The concrete floor slabs have flaking, or what we call spalling, underneath the crawl space. The concrete's falling away from the reinforcing bar. And non-compliant windows, we're in a zone where we have to have impact windows and impact doors. And the spalling in those concrete crawl spaces was primarily caused because of insufficient ventilation. There's very few of them, and the ones that are there are not unblocked. So. Hurricane Andrew in 1992 was the slap in the face for my industry as it relates to hurricane recovery. And the evidence of that was probably most of South Florida, localized particularly in the Homestead area. It was just devastating. Different versions of the building code since then, including the predecessors to today's code, the Southern Standard Building Code, which used to be what we worked on here, or the South Florida Building Code, which Dave Broward and Palm Beach County worked on previously. Now they've all been homogenized together after 8 editions. They mostly track the International Building Code today, except that Florida has special wind load requirements and Florida strapping and anchorage requirements to meet what we know to be the predictable wind loads. So, what are they? Well, today we work on a wind map. When I design a project, the first thing I do is go in and pinpoint on this map where the project's located. I do that electronically, and it will give me an interpolation as to exactly what the design wind load should be for this project. In the case of Jordan Park, it's 146 miles an hour with a 3-second gust. And that's the load we have to design to meet current requirements. So the renovation of Historic Village is a Level 3 project under Chapter 9 of the Florida Building Code for existing buildings. We must comply with all requirements of the Florida Building Code for building, accessibility, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire prevention codes. Now this is where Tony says, you got to make this so people can understand it, because we don't do what you do. So I thought to myself, okay, wait a minute. Let's just visually look at what someone has to do to restore these buildings. And if I start using some of that stuff I learned in college and should have forgotten, you just tell me what your questions are. Here's a sort of graphic view of what we're talking about, one building. And Division 0 or Phase 0 would certainly be to go and see if there's anything we can salvage. What can we take out? Are there any refrigerators or appliances that can be used elsewhere? Is there anything else that we could use in our maintenance program for restoration? Once we make that determination, then the first thing we have to do is peel off the porches and the slabs under them. So they're now gone. Then we have to peel off the roof covering and the roof deck and everything above it. And the reason we do that is threefold. Number one, those gable ends, when you can see the 2 triangles at either end of that's the gable ends, have to be worked on for asbestos abatement. And in order to gain access to those, that roof structure is ultimately going to have to be replaced. So then the asbestos material we identified on the inside face of that gable end, which is highlighted in the orange, would have to be dealt with by an authorized technician, someone who is an abatement contractor. And these gable ends would be cut right across the top of the tie beam. And once they were cut, they would fall to the ground, and that material would have to be collected and bagged and disposed of in accordance with EPA guidelines. Again, I'm an asbestos abatement contractor, not a general contractor. So now we take the interior improvements out of the systems, because obviously without a roof and needing to change the interior layout for ADA accessibility, all of those partitions and doors and carpets and paint and drywall are going to be gone. So it would be demolished and removed from the site. The exterior doors and windows, as you recall, we have to have impact-resistant doors and windows in this zone. They would be removed. The perimeter would be excavated down to foundation ties. And that will allow the contractor to access the foundations and the tie beam. Now, the tie beam is the uninterrupted horizontal line across the top of the windows and doors. It goes all around the building that's designed to tie the whole building like a collar together. So the new requirement is that there is, and here Tony's going to blank, there is structural integrity. What that means is there's a continuous structural connection between that foundation and that tie beam and that roof. So by the time I cut 68 channels in the outside wall, the stucco is going to be of 0 value anyway. I might as well take it off and get it out of my way. Then we need to address the issue of getting additional openings into the crawl space so we can have proper ventilation and damp-proof the bottom of the slabs and the dividing walls between the units. Now most of the demolition is over, so we put back the excavated material around the foundations. We put a new pre-engineered roof, code-compliant, pre-engineered roof deck, roof covering, and accessories. Installed that. Porches and slabs are reconstructed, the interior partitions and doors installed, the new plumbing, electrical, heating, and air conditioning that are now code compliant are also installed. I'm sorry, am I behind the curve, porches?
You were on.
Okay. cabinets, appliances, we're all new on the inside. And finally, we install new sidewalks, ramps, handrails, and site improvements to parking and landscaping. There's an entrance improvement too, Susan, for vehicles.
Yeah, we would have to improve the, I think it's Johnny Mac Place that runs through the middle of the development. It's currently an alley that's only 13 feet wide, so fire vehicles actually can't go there. So the fire department would require us to make that roadway at least 20 feet wide. So we have to modify all of the parking and roadway there. In addition, for ADA, because we were talking about these being senior occupied dwelling units, we would want to bring it up to FBC's accessibility standards. So we'd probably have to build new ramps and rails to get to the front door of each unit or the back door, either way.
So after your board move becoming a general contractor on this project, the question is, what would it cost? Our current budget for this 31 unit, that's all 31 now, is $4,170,169.67, or $187.73 a square foot. So you might ask yourself, okay, is that an apples-to-apples comparison with building a new building? And the answer is no, because there's a number of features that are included in the $133.05 a square foot new building construction that are not yet added into what we've done in the senior housing, senior village. I mean, what we've basically done is take care of the code mandated requirements. Some of these features above the line could be added. Some will probably be difficult because of one-story development has a less site area you can use for recreation and features than a multi-story which has a small footprint. So they might be able to be added, some or a few of them, but as it stands today, I get all the features on the left for $133.05, and I get 5 of the features that are common to the list here for $187.
I think it's important to point out, because we talked a lot about the hurricane provisions that the new building will have. So the new building is going to have a generator that will be able to sustain all the residents.
And that's one of the
Right.
features here.
Right.
Also.
You know, during a hurricane, I mean, there's a lot of those features that we talked about as something we want, that the housing authority wanted to upgrade, that's not included in the $30 a square foot.
All right, at this point, I'll ask Mrs. Sue Bradley to take you through some site studies and a couple other issues.
Okay. This is just a diagram to show us what this 60-unit proposed building looks like on top of the site. And I think, if you can see these, I dashed in the location of the existing buildings, the 9 buildings. I hope you can see that. Can you see it clearly or not? You can see the dashed in lines where your existing buildings are, and our new building is designed to address the street on 2 sides, facing 9th Avenue and facing Jordan Park. And then per the city's zoning codes, we're required to put our parking in back of the building. So the board asked us to look at whether or not we could partially build a mid-rise building and retain one or more of the existing historic dwelling units, putting aside the cost of rehabbing them. So I guess, can I go to the next slide? What'll fit on there, retain 2 of the buildings, those 2 on the bottom, which is, I think, 709, and I can't remember what the address of the other one is, or 790 Jordan Park. We could keep that unit, you could possibly keep 2 of them, but you would lose at least 12 units out of your mid-rise. And again, we're keeping the parking inside, and you would probably lose your pickleball court and your pergola.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If we kept one of the units, we would lose what? What would we lose?
You would lose,
Just what you just.
what I just said, 12 units, I'm sorry.
Okay, so even just one unit, we would still lose 12.
Yes.
No, it was 6 for the unit building.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, in this scheme, if we could go to the next
Go to the
scheme,
next
you can
scheme,
see where.
yes. And I'm gonna go over the numbers with you.
With this one, if we
Okay.
saved 1, we would lose 6 out of
We're
the.
gonna give you the scenarios.
I'm gonna give you the scenarios and just hold on, you don't get that part.
Susan,
Yes,
let me just say one thing, so we're thinking about this holistically. We're dealing with construction costs and unit costs here, and as I was talking to my friends here this morning, if we chose to do either one or two, we have some other evidence that have to be wound into this. First of which would be modify the site plan that's already been approved by the city, revise the civil landscape and drainage engineering plans to the right of way, change the construction documents for the 60 buildings, and create new construction documents to revise one or more of these buildings. And the time delay to do that, I'm not sure what that does to our loan and the closing and all that. That's outside of my being aware. But it will take some time to get that work done if that's what is on the table.
Yeah.
there are some ways that we've come up with or thought of at this point in time that we could integrate reusing existing materials from the historic buildings in the new development. We thought maybe we could save undamaged 1x6 tongue and groove roof decking and use that as one of our wall finishes in certain areas of the building, like in the multi-purpose room, in the entry foyer. It just gives us an opportunity there. These 4 photographs, we've done a lot of historic research in the Poynter Library at University of South Florida has complete documentation of the work that was done in 1938. It's just fantastic.
But I wanted to just be able to tie in the numbers so that if it would make sense to keep one of those things, or if it doesn't make sense, because that's the whole deal that we're trying to, does it make sense? In the long run, meeting with what the public is asking for and what we're able to do in order to sustain your park long after we're gone. So it is worth it to keep.
We're going there, promise.
Long term, how do those numbers
We're going.
go into the future?
We're going there. Now,
Okay.
And I did want to mention one more thing that we had our forensic structural engineer look at is whether or not that building or one of those buildings could be moved. And yes, it could be. It would be expensive even to move it to the next parcel over. It would be around.
Taking it up and moving it somewhere.
So what we did is we took 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1 is the project as we have originally proposed it, which is rehabbing 206 of the family units and building a new construction 60-unit senior building. And not doing any rehab on the existing senior units, they would be demolished. That would give us a total of 266 units. Scenario number 2 would still be rehabbing the family units, but as Susan mentioned, in order to accommodate one building, which would be 3 units, that we would rehab of the senior units, we would have to decrease the new construction building by 6 units. You know, we know the demand for affordable housing, particularly senior housing. So do we not want to take advantage of the opportunity to produce more units as part of this project? What does that do to our rental revenue? Because our rental revenue is what sustains the project. How much revenue can we generate in order to be able to support debt to do the rehab work? The housing choice voucher rent for that same unit in the new construction building is $861, or double what it is under RAD. So the new construction units are what's driving our revenue to help us rehab the other units. And so I think that that's real critical in understanding. And as you can see, with scenario number 3, we we lose a total of $304,000 a year in revenue, down to 237 units. And again, that's because your RAD rents are so much lower, and you lose then basically your higher rentability. So that's really what happens. So that's kind of the three different scenarios, the impact that it has on the rental revenue. So then if we go to the next piece of the analysis, our operating costs to operate that property on an annual basis is $1.3 million, and that's based on real operating costs, okay? Which gives us a net income of $933,000, which allows us to support a maximum loan of $11.5 million. So that gives us the ability to support more debt to be able to do more work on the units. If we go to scenario number 2, basically our revenue is reduced, as I had mentioned, our operating costs reduced, but just slightly. We're only changing 3 units. So our net income is slightly different, but it's still, our net income was the loss of $52,000, which basically decreases our maximum loan amount to 10.1, or we lose $1.4 million in debt that we can put on this property. Then if we go to scenario number 3, the number becomes much more significant. Again, because of the loss in revenue, basically we have a maximum loan of only $8.5 million, which basically is a loss of $3.9 million in the loan amount or in debt that we could put on the property to do the work. So that's kind of the impact of the 3 different scenarios. So then if we take it to the next step, again, trying to keep it at the high level, I take our maximum loan and then I look at our other funding. The other funding category is our tax credit equity from the 4% tax credits, and it's about a little over $5 million of money that the Housing Authority is putting in from various other sources. Okay, so then I show what our total available would be under each of the 3 scenarios. Our total available under the scenario we proposed is $30.3 million, and under scenario number 2, where we're keeping 3 rehab units, but we're reducing our new construction to 54 units, we've got 28.8, and under the last scenario, we've only got 237, the money we have available is 23.7. Then we've got to put our soft costs in there. Your soft costs are all your financing fees, your developer fee, all of the things you have to do to pay third parties, to do all of your engineering, your architect, all of that is there. And then obviously, by the number of units, those costs vary a little bit as well. But then what we come up with is what we have available to cover our hard costs, our actual construction costs. So under scenario number 1, we have almost $21 million in hard costs available. Scenario number 2, where we rehab the 3 units and we do the 54 new construction, we're at 19.9. And if we just rehab 237 units, we've only got about 15.1 in hard money. So what does that mean? Okay, basically it says is that in scenario number 1, our hard costs for new construction are a little over $9 million. We would not be rehabbing anything for the senior units. So we have $11.8 million available for our family units, or $57,000 per unit, $57,500 per unit to be able to do the level of rehab in the family units. Under scenario number 2, our new construction costs go down slightly to 8.1. Our rehab cost for those 3 senior units is the $403,000, okay? Then that leaves us with 11.1 available. So then we have $54,000 per unit for our family rehab, which gives us a loss of basically, $3,200 per unit. Well, $3,200 does a significant improvement in those family units. When we go to scenario number 3 is where we really see the significant difference again. We don't do any new construction of senior. So now our rehab costs for the senior units have gone up to $4.1 million, which is the number that Rob illustrated to you today. So then that decreases what we've got available for the family units to only $9.9 million, which means that our rehab amount for the family units is only $48,000. That's $9,200 per unit. That's a lot of rehab in those units. So we would have to give up a lot of the improvements that we're proposing to do in the family units if we were to try to rehab the existing 31 and do no new construction. So basically, that's the bottom line of where this takes us based on these 3 different scenarios. Yes?
Okay, Mr. Webb.
Yes, ma'am.
These numbers do not include going back to the city and reconfiguring and
Redesign.
redesign.
No, ma'am.
So now we're adding even more dollars.
Soft
soft top, that was gonna be my question, that soft cost column would go up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, your soft cost column is actually going to increase.
Tony, how does that impact our application and things for going forward with HUD? Does that impact us? Because it's gonna slow us down, or what would be that impact? And I'm really talking about scenario number 2.
I understand. It's more than that, and I'm gonna let Rod address that to answer if I'm gonna delay answering, because I want him to tell you the impact of HUD.
Right.
Because we have been given a CHAP, an agreement to enter into a HAP. We've gotten our contract approval, and undoing all this would mean some things that we have to give back to HUD. So I'm gonna let him tell you, that's gotta go into it.
But I think the answer is clear to what you're saying. Soft costs are going up, your decrease in rehab is going to be larger. So, so maybe you're at 5,000 or 6,000, decrease per unit instead of 4,000. I mean, because there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done.
And the other thing is, when you start looking at the pie that we started off with, it shows you where everyone is across the country.
Right.
As far as the progress that we've made around that wheel. We go back to the beginning of the wheel.
Okay. Yeah, those are some of the things we have to consider when you're looking at the future.
Yes.
What's going to happen, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
What I would like to not answer that and defer to Rod to give you more, but I do want to kind of make a statement. Those buildings have served its purpose for 80-some years, and to have a useful life cycle is great. I think this agency have gotten rid of, or been forced to get rid of previous old, obsolete developments because it was too costly to maintain. We're being asked to do the same thing in 2018 when we can give a better product to the folks who need increased affordable housing. To sacrifice that to maintain something built in 39 that have served its purpose.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions when we talked about the different things. However, in your presentation, it looked as if even the historic buildings are going to be pretty much almost, what percentage of those historic buildings are going to be left?
Foundations, stem walls, concrete floors, and perimeter walls is basically what's left.
Okay.
And the point of that is that none of the stability or stabilization efforts are corporate. They're going to be mandated. And they're going to be mandated whether it sits where it is or whether it gets relocated to someplace else in order to meet code. And to that extent, it is something that you have to look at as a commissioner to determine where are the dollars that you are responsible for best spent to address your stated mission and authorized purpose. Are they for historic preservation at the expense of $400,000 for one building?
Excuse me.
At the expense of an additional minimum 29 units? Because this is all for one and one for all. You deal with the new construction or you don't. And if you don't, you also have to throw into the equation in terms of cost, aside from starting your time clock, aside from the lack of units in the city. This project takes you to 10% of the stated deficit in the city. The stated number is 3. So if you're talking about 3,000 units that you already need, which doesn't include the invisible people that are out there. It doesn't include them. But you're talking about a 10% hit at that number just at Jordan Park. You're also talking about the compelling fact that the Burlington that opened a week ago is what? Full. So you have to look at the whole picture when you're making a fiduciary decision. And it's not just money. It is your purpose. It is your authorized use of the funds that you do derive through public housing. And you're also looking at a comparison in terms of time of an upside at 35 remaining useful life years versus a mandatory 99. Now, understand what that mandatory 99 is. It's one thing to look at how long bricks and mortar will hold up. It's a whole nother thing to look at how long that will hold up as affordable housing. And that is a compelling issue in this core. The HUD numbers for the south side of St. Petersburg are compelling. When you look at even the combined availability of housing at a number of somewhere around 1,392 units on the high side of affordable housing, and the real side in terms of that specific area for Jordan Park around 224, it's compelling. Can you make a decision not to address that issue? And it's not just a problem of St. Petersburg Housing Authority, it's the city of St. Petersburg problem. Because this is just one core of the city. And St. Petersburg Housing Authority isn't just Jordan Park. St. Petersburg Housing Authority is St. Petersburg. So with that, I don't want to give away the rest of my speech. But
I completely understand that, because I'm, aside from another thing, I'm an affordable housing builder. My question is, when we're making these presentations, and we're talking about useful life of those buildings, because once those buildings are rehab to the point that you're talking about, now you've extended the useful life of the building. So we're not really talking about that, and I really kind of rest with what you just said, is what we're going to do in creating more affordable units for people in the city, and we have to go beyond where we are sitting today. Yes, sir.
I gotta say this. I was here in 2000. Those who are around know for a fact that what you just said, that's what I said then. I wish we had these kind of figures up there, because all we talking about doing now, we still will be talking about kicking the can down the road. But having lived in public housing, and seen all of this, I said the same thing. Those people are going to stay in this old building that they said about a year ago when all these rats pictures that were seen on the news. They're going to say, that's exactly what I predicted would happen. And the same thing would happen now. If we do this now, they're going to say the same thing a little later on. They're going to say the same thing. Why they got us over in these old, buildings, all these people over in these new buildings. So it's one thing to get input, and we've done that. We've done, as stated, we've done everything that we are supposed to do, okay? We're on a track to bring all this stuff together. Now, we can sit back now and go back to what happened in 2000 when the public was asking us to knock a hole in the wall of the old Jordan Park. That way we can reduce the density, okay? Because those buildings are nice, they're nice and built, all we have to do, at the same time, we resisted that. At the same time, the public would say, oh, there are seniors in these buildings and they don't have to relocate, and I said to myself the same thing. So we got to do what we got to do, okay? Now, the same thing is happening now. About a year or so ago, when the picture was about the rats and all that, I keep going back to that because that's exactly what happened. We weren't talking about the large buildings, we were talking about senior buildings. That's what it was all about. All the rats and people not keeping the place up. All that was about talking about that one little section. And now we're back to talking about that one little section. Now because getting rid of, we need to make this better, and that's what we propose And now they're saying, well, let's keep it a little bit longer. So that's what we are. I just wanted to know that. I was here in 2000, you know.
And thank you for those comments, Commissioner Harvey. But I need to mention, we're talking about committing to affordable housing in South St. Petersburg sector of the town. And the way that we're doing it is that we started talking to the land trust in 2016 about donating our land for a fee that we would then preserve affordability of that property for 99 years. But we have gotten resistant from Pinellas County, and that then keeps Jordan Park vulnerable for it not being affordable housing 20, 30, 40 years from now when we're not here. But that's why it's so important that we must get Jordan Park on the land trust list, because it keeps it affordable for 99 years, and it is a source of income to help us do the renovation and the new construction that we need to get done in Jordan Park. So that will be a big issue in the future, because that makes it affordable. I've had people call from the city and say to you, well, Mr. Love, if you put it in the land trust, you won't be able to take any debt on the property. Oh, that's great to know. Thank you. So it's for some reason, you don't make a comment about that if you're worried about it being locked up 99 years. So just want to say that. Robert, you go into the negative effect of undoing our CHAP and our RAD deal that we've done with that. There's some expenses that we will have to get back.
I'll try to be brief. When the commissioner said we've been here a long time, I thought she was going to say since 10 o'clock. So with that, so we went through. So I mentioned earlier that we needed more money than was in RAD to do all this, and I was very reluctant to do that. Why would they want to give $800 a month? They can give $400 a month. And then first they said no. And we came back and said, well, we need more money. What if, and there's a process you can do with that to get that extra money. And basically what you have to do is show that units are obsolete, quote unquote, and that it would cost too much to repair them. And then they'll say, okay, you can have the $800 voucher instead of the $400 RAD, because you can't keep them going, you need to replace them. So we said, well, we think the 31 units are obsolete, and we did, when we started, we were looking at, can they make a deal regarding all Jordan Park, including the family? And we said, we think we can make this all work if you give us, HUD, what if you give us, we do 35% of the units as RAD at $400, and we do 65% at $800, and then we think we'll have enough money. And HUD thought about that for a minute and said no.
Right.
and then so then we said, well, this just isn't going to work, you know. And we went in, we had meetings with senior leadership in Washington with HUD. Your congressperson came to the HUD building to argue, which I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was Chris.
Right.
He just got to watch this.
Yeah. He actually came to a HUD meeting.
He didn't know that he wasn't supposed to do that. But he did it. He went to argue for Jordan Park. So HUD, the leadership of HUD said, well, okay, but we can't accept this. Sharpen your pencils and come back with something not as expensive. So Tony directed us, and we came back and said, okay, what if we can show you that these 31 units that weren't built from scratch in 2000, 2001, that those are obsolete. Then you need to give us these 31 higher, more money units, And the rest of it, we live with what we live, but part of what we'll also do is we'll increase it by 29 units so that we're fulfilling some more need in St. Petersburg. And they finally said, okay, we'll give you that much. And the way that happens with HUD is they give you a ruling or a decision that says, okay, you presented the evidence, they quoted Mr. Wedding's report, and the things that were said about the 31 units, and then HUD said, the department concurs with the Housing Authority's determination that 31 units are obsolete due to their age and condition. So that then gives us the right to apply for these higher cost vouchers for 31 of them, which we did. But HUD put some more conditions on their approval. And they mostly amount to making sure that the St. Petersburg Housing Authority is going to do what it said it's going to do. Because, why is HUD doing this? We say, well, we're just kidding, So HUD said, okay, but the Housing Authority shall ensure that 60 units of other housing are developed on the property. And this is just regarding the senior village and replacing it, and operated and reserved for families at low income for a period of not less than 30 years. So that's what we're required to do, and there's supposed to be a use agreement on the property to do that, and so on. So what happens if we change our minds now? Well, we have to go back to HUD because we have requirements from HUD now, and I think basically there are two things, and I do think it's a different magnitude. 3 units is different from 31. But if we said for 31, well, we want to renovate them. We did all this effort showing you that they were obsolete. You agreed with us, and we're saying now, well, maybe not. We're going to fix them up. And I think there are basically two questions. One is the Housing Authority's credibility, really, because the commissioners voted for this. We pushed it on HUD. We gave them the report. They decided. It's like you as an individual, you're kind of as good as your word, and you represented all this. Now you're saying maybe not. So it's how does HUD look at that? So that's one question. But the other is, what does HUD do about the fact that we already got these higher cost vouchers? We relocated everybody. They're not there. They need the vouchers. HUD gave them to us under what we urged from them, which we're now saying it's not something we're going to do. So I don't know exactly what they might do. They might rescind this approval. They might say, well, we're going to, in addition to the number Cindy showed you, that, well, we're not going to let you keep that extra money, that extra $400 a month. I mean, you got it based on showing us something you're not going to do. So I don't know what they would do. It's sort of I hopefully educated guess. But I would say that it does. We would have to go back to HUD. We'd have to negotiate about these 60 units we said we were going to provide. We'd have to say to them, we want to save these 3 units even though we demonstrated to you that they're obsolete. But we have community reasons we're going to do that. And then whatever HUD thinks it has to do about any money would be our problem. So that's sort of briefly, I think, what we need to do.
In addition to which, there are all the very tangible differences to consider in terms of what you can do otherwise to the other 206 in terms of available dollars and where you position yourself in terms of this marketplace that we live in. Rents are not $400 a month in this corridor or anywhere else in St. Petersburg. They're not. So to the extent that you're making a decision in a vacuum, you've got to consider some of the outside issues, outside of Jordan Park, outside of this particular financing arrangement. And you can't do it in the absence of that. In addition to which, you have to look at what the city is committed to itself, what the county is committed to itself, what has actually been done in this corridor. When you look at putting this on the table as a bet for what's going to happen, look at your history in terms of funding from the city of St. Petersburg, and look at your history in terms of funding from Pinellas County, and look at their total expenses for this type of housing, and answer the question truthfully, as things exist, not as what we would have them to look like. I think it's very, very important. And it's material. You've got full disclosure of everything in terms of what we've got, what we can do with it, what we can project in terms of useful life, but don't forget the compelling part of this. Even if you fix them up, even if you meet everybody's passion, can you keep them affordable? Can you keep them affordable? You got a 99-year hook, or you got one maybe 35, and you need to look at the Tropicana plan to see where it is. You need to look at what else is being done in terms of penny for Pinellas and where they hit those pennies. You can't do it in the absence of that.
But a bigger injustice from where I sit every day as the CEO of this agency is that you're denying 6 units of 6 families that would have a turnover rate of maybe over the next 40, 50 years of 30, 40 families that will be denied those 6 units because we got 1937 buildings of 3 units. Ain't they pretty? Nobody want to rent them. Housing authority can't rent them, but they pretty. And we spent $400,000 to rehab them. It doesn't make sense.
We can have pictures of those.
Let me digress this Susan real quick. It's some compelling information today. I mean, just a little bit more today. Okay. There was a slide when you said some things that we could do with
Yes.
that. Okay. Tell me this. If we took, I don't know the land configuration, but if we took some of that and built a tiny little model, just
No, that was one of
tiny
my
model
ideas.
of some of the original, not for living in, we're not talking about for living in.
Sort
We're
of
not talking about sort of a, this is what was here, yada, yada, yada. I mean, if there's a walking path or something like that, and we're talking about a little walk.
or in a corner of.
Well, maybe in lieu of the pergola, we
Yes.
could,
I'm sorry, say that again.
in lieu of the pergola being this current.
Yeah, that's on, in lieu of something, so that you got your original materials.
There you go.
Tiny little model of what one of the units look like, not that long thing, but something like that, that people can put like little things. I'm just saying something that doesn't, so that we don't lose, because it's a compelling fact about the turnover in the 6 families and how that is. We don't want to lose that, but somehow the historic value of what in people's minds can something like that be accomplished? You know, using some of the same materials and yada. I know there's some asbestos, but not that stuff. The good stuff, the good stuff.
Well, that's why we were thinking,
Instead of some of the
that's a good
other things,
idea.
you know, just kind of looking at that and see the cost of that and how that, I don't know if that changes what you have to go back to the city with and.
Well, I think what we're looking to do from here, is in the interest of time, what we're looking to do from here is to begin to explore those options
Yeah.
with historic preservation as to the district. That's more viable than we have in terms of preserving a physical building itself, in terms of the cost, in terms of the sustainability of it, and in terms of the timing of it. So there are a lot of those, and so I will be, like military, I will be doing some community outreach to explore those possibilities and already have begun that process. And if you recall, we're also working with Dr. Paget, looked to have some input also from Ray Arsenal and some of our local historians in that regard. And there are a number of artifacts too that many of the residents have come forward, at least to me, with that say they'd like to have included in some kind of an archival representation of George Park. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's
great place to go.
Come and look at it and see, and then they get out. We're not living in it, but
in South Carolina, Charleston area, which is a very historic city, okay, we had a project where basically we had the same issue, built in 1930, no physical historic significance, but a lot of social historical significance. So we actually hired a historian and we did a pictorial display, and the city actually has it on display in the new city hall. That was the history of the development that, you know, basically addressed all of that. And so there are ways, I think, that you can maybe get to some of that through a variety of ways of doing it, but I think there are ways to do it that can be very, you know, sensitive to the people in the community who certainly have very strong emotional, you know, attachments to the history of Jordan Park. And so I think there are some ways, and I think certainly some of them have been suggested today by reuse of materials, whether it's on-site at Jordan Park or at a museum or at City Hall or in housing authorities' corporate offices, and it might be a combination of those locations.
Back in Charleston.
Okay.
And I saw a lot of what you're talking
Yes,
about.
yes.
In fact, I did one of them. The next one will be the island, but it's two people that do it. One do it in the city. And I know about all the iron, I know about all the iron and the guy with his house where he built it, all those fences and all that. So,
Yeah, he's got some historical stuff. So yeah, so there's, you know, there's ways to basically preserve that social significance. And I think that's what is a good compromise, you know, to address the community's concerns.
Well, I want to ask Commissioner Davis, do you have any questions you need to ask? Because in August, our August board meeting, staff and myself will make a recommendation to the board to consider. We have a deadline to have, with HUD, to have, by the end of the year, to have gone to closing and not be here in January of 19. With no decision or met our deadline to have closed this deal with RAD, and that includes our Jordan Park and our AMP2, which is one package. HUD insisted when we were in Washington and then after we got back here, that is one transaction. AMP3 and AMP2, they go together. So, but we can work on them separately because the financing of AMP2 is not as nearly as great as the financing of AMP3, and we don't have tax credit tied up. And that property is more valuable in the sense that if the housing authority had a future that it wanted to sell, you never know, we would not be tied up with a land trust deal as Jordan Park. Jordan Park was developed in the 30s affordable housing, and I think it has a purpose to continue to be that. Whereas the property that we have acquired on the north side, or more recently built and acquired, that could have some marketability. Someone could come in and want to buy it up one day, and we could go out and build 200 more affordable housing units.
I just wanted to say from a legal standpoint, when people are talking about closing by the end of the year, or we're here on August 8th or whatever, we're running out of time. Because, like, for instance, we're having a kickoff call with the tax credit investment this week.
Right.
So, in order to be able to meet this afternoon, I guess. So in order to meet that deadline, we don't have a lot of time. Now, there's obviously, it can be pushed, and you've heard the consequences, but I'm just saying, if we're going to meet that deadline, we need to have a direction soon.
And we will bring that forward. And we have the video of this meeting being taped. The purpose for that is that I am going to get copies to other commissioners that were not here, so they would be able to make an informed decision, or we may convene again as a workshop and show the video as a group, or those people that were not here, they may want to come to the agency and see it as a group. But we want this information captured because this is what should be explored and be able to vote come August 23rd about the direction of this particular RAD deal. And I want to thank Cindy and Rod for getting on airplanes on short notice to come here today. I really appreciate it. I need to say this before I go. We offered to bring Cindy down in May or June to the City Council and explain RAD and how it works to the council as a whole. We have a date of July 17th. but that week of July 17th or a week before, we got a call that said you have been uninvited and that the city council would contact HUD and get HUD to come in and give them a presentation. So this type of information for the city council people was offered to them so that they would understand what this housing authority has been going. And publicly, I've not ever answered any questions that they wanted to know as a council. So I just wanted to make that on record that we offered to bring them into the education so that the city council themselves could be aware of why we were doing the things that we're doing here at this agency. And I also want to thank the local consultant and legal and the architect for being here today, and I thank you very much. And I want to thank LaShonda for going through with her throat problem, being able to hang in there with the relocation. So we welcome this opportunity today, and I'm going to close now. No? I'm closing my statement. You may want to make your statement.
I just want to make sure that you left here with more than you came. I want to make sure that your understanding, your comfort level is improving. And I want to make sure that you appreciate the fact that every single one of us has this issue to deal with. Whether you're a resident, a former resident, or just know where Jordan Park is in St. Petersburg, Florida, this issue is buried in Jordan Park. It's an issue that affects our city and affects the fabric of our future as well. And the decisions that we make today are critical. The decisions that we make today will affect future years. And we have a choice to make. Let's make it with truthful and complete information. We'll be holding workshops to discuss the historic preservation opportunities that have been presented today and others that have been presented in sidebars throughout the community. We look forward to making sure that what we do is provide affordable housing for the foreseeable future throughout the city of St. Petersburg, and we're going to start with Jordan Park. Thank you so much for coming.